Hey everyone, so today we're going to have a look at how to load your own pre-trained Keras model onto AWS and host it there, and how we can also deploy it so we can access it via an endpoint. The prerequisite is pretty much that you've got your model, and then all we're going to do is just use my notebook, which has all the code ready to go, and then that's simply going to sort of convert the loaded model into a format which AWS expects, and then also host it there and get an endpoint. So yeah, first thing, log into your AWS console as I have here, and simply go to Amazon SageMaker, and we're just going to spin up a notebook instance. So this is basically some compute power so that we can just use a Jupyter notebook, which we're used to. So if we go to SageMaker and we go to notebook just here, and we want a notebook instance, then I'll just move myself out of the way here. You're just going to click create notebook instance. And we're just going to keep everything as default. Just give your instance a name. Let's just go YouTube 12:07 p.m. Just something unique. It doesn't really matter about the instance type, so I'm just going to go to the smallest there that's available. And yeah, like I said, just keep everything as default. So just create notebook instance. And yeah, that's going to spin up. In my experience, it takes about 7 minutes or so for that to come up. So if we just focus on this sort of pending thing here, once it says that it's ready, then we're good to go. In the meantime, let's get that Jupyter notebook, which I mentioned. So I've got it saved. There's a link in the description to a file on Google Drive. So if you just go to that website, would be here, just click download and save that to anywhere on your computer really. And yeah, so what we're going to do is, once that's spun up, we're going to simply load our notebook onto the instance. We're going to load our models onto the instance, and then they're sort of all going to work together to eventually be deployed on AWS. So yeah, I'll check back in with you guys once that's spun up. Alrighty, so we can see that that's now in service. So it only took about 3 minutes or so not too bad. So what we're going to do is click Open Jupyter, and once that's up and running, like I said, we're going to upload our notebook so that we've got some code as well as our model or model file. So cool, notebook list is empty, that's to be expected. So we just simply go to upload, and this is the notebook here. So we're going to open that and click upload. And as well as that, like I said, upload your model. Upload. Where is my model? Now, like I said, you can have just one complete file, which is your H5 file, or you could have maybe saved it in two separate files, JSON and H5. So do whichever one suits you, but for me, I've just got my model here. You may have model JSON and model weights, but I've just got everything wrapped up in one. So upload whatever you need to, so just open and upload, and sweet, they're all good to go. Now simply go into the notebook, yes, and we want Conda TensorFlow P36, so that's Python 3.6. So select that, set kernel, and what we're going to do first is, step 0 is upload your model to SageMaker. We've done that. I do have this wget statement here, so just in case you don't have your own pre-trained model, you can sort of just use the one that I'm using, which is just the Iris data set. So yeah, just uncomment that, and then that'll simply get you my model from my GitHub. But for now, we're using our model, which we've uploaded. So next step is to input the model name. Now this basically, it's just sort of a prompt for the future so that we know if we're using just one H5 file, or if we're using that split up version where it's JSON and weights as a H5. So just fill out one of these so that we know how to read it in. So we'll run that, say we're using model.h5. Now that just corresponds with the file name here. So whatever your model's called here, make sure you input the correct name. So run that, Now we're going to load the model. Now, from experience, that sometimes takes a couple of minutes. We will get a heap of warnings. Oh, there we go. It's actually pretty quick this time. And yeah, we will get some warnings, which is to be expected. But mostly what we need to see here is that the model has been loaded, which is good. The next step is to run this function which I've written, convert H5 to AWS. Now this is adapted from some documentation that AWS has on loading a Keras model, but I've sort of added a few extra bits and pieces. So what this does is we've got our Keras model, but what we need to be in the format which AWS expects. Now what that means is with this function converts our Keras model, it converts it into the protobuf format. It then saves it within a certain file structure, which AWS expects. It's sort of quite a nested file hierarchy. Then that file hierarchy is completely wrapped into a tarball, and then that tarball is zipped. So it's about a 4-step process which takes place. But yeah, I've just sort of wrapped it up all neatly into this function for you. So simply run that. And yeah, again, that was pretty quick. So you will see these two statements. You can ignore those. That's normal. I did freak out when I first saw that, but that's fine. The main thing that we need here is this message here. So what's happened is it's now converted our file into the protobuf and saved it into those different files. So if we go back to our instance, we'll see that we now have this folder here, export. And then within that is heaps of sort of nested folders and things like that. And eventually deep down will be sort of our model and weights, etc. But it's gone one step further and it's wrapped it into a tarball, so .tar, and then it's zipped it into .gz. So this export file here, which deep down our model is right at the bottom of it, is then wrapped up into this. So this is sort of the key thing that we need. We don't really need this anymore. So next, that wrapped up tarball file, we're going to move that into S3. Now, running this piece of code basically makes an S3 bucket for us, and it's just given sort of like a random name. So we can run that. So currently what's happening is an S3 bucket is being made, given a random name, and that tarball is being put into that. That is run. Now, if you've got like heaps of S3 buckets and you're like, well, where'd my model go? If you run this code, it'll tell you what your bucket name is now called. So Sagemaker, US East -1, etc. Now, if we want to have a look, if we go back to our console and we go into S3, we should see our bucket there. There it is there. And if we go into it, we should see that model .tar file. So everything's sort of set up as it should be. So back to our code. We're now going to create a Sagemaker model. So you'll notice here there's an entry point, which is sort of like your training script. I won't go into that, but just know that it needs to be there, and we can simply, because it's a pre-trained model, we can just create an empty train.py file. So essentially we're just making an empty file and we're creating our model, and then one little parameter is the entry point, which is just an empty file. I won't go into it, but yeah, just go with it. Yeah, so yeah, this will make our model. So we'll run that. And that's done. Now, if we go into here, this is going to deploy our model. Now, this is the bit that sort of takes the most time. I've got here that it can take around about 10 minutes. And yeah, currently there's sort of like a bit of a funny quirk. I think they're sort of updating, or they updated some of the functionality. And you will sort of get this funny message here. But again, we can just ignore it. Now, I'm just going to see how it goes. In the past, when I've done this, it's created a model and an endpoint, but it seems to just keep looping around and around and around. So I'm just going to see what happens in this instance. So let's deploy that. Yep, so there's that message which I said. It'll say update endpoints and no ops. That's all good. We can ignore that. Now, yeah, this will take about 10 minutes, so I'll let this run and I'll be back with you in a second. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, there's sort of this weird sort of thing going on with the deployment at the moment where it sort of creates an endpoint and then it creates another one and it just keeps going on a loop. I've tried Googling it and trying to find some answers to it and not really getting anywhere on this one. However, I'm just going to show you sort of how I'm going to sort of troubleshoot this problem so that if you come across this yourself and there's still no solution, you know what to do. It'll also sort of give you a bit of a better feel for where your models are, where the endpoints are, how to get to them, and things like that, and how they all interact. So for now, I'm just going to stop this deployment. It'll probably chuck up some errors saying keyboard interrupt. Now, if we go back to our Sagemaker console, here, we can see, just move Liam up here, sort of various areas within Sagemaker. We were in here, we were in a notebook instance. We're not doing training because we've already done that locally. We're here now, the models and the endpoints. So if we have a look at the models, I think there's probably going to be 2 there. Yeah, because like I said, it just kept going round and round and round. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep just the earliest one. So I'm going to delete this one. And that will leave us with just one model. Similarly, if we go to back to our dashboard and we go to our endpoints, we only want there to be 1. So again, I'm just going to keep the earliest one. So this 129 one where again, it says in service. So I'll see if I can delete this one. Okay, so I can't delete that one just yet because it's still trying to create it. That'll sort of time out eventually, but we want to play with this one here. So, okay, so now that we've sort of cleaned up those extra endpoints and models that were sort of continually being created, we're at the final step now where we can simply just put some data through an endpoint and get a prediction back. Now, this all happens in this final chunk here. Now, you'll see we just import the relevant libraries that we need. And what we're going to do is, one of the arguments is our actual endpoint. So we need to sort of tell it what it is. And it's pretty easy. All that it is if we go back to our Sagemaker console and go back to the endpoints, we want the earliest one. So I'm just going to turn this one off. We don't need that one. We just want the earliest one, this 129 version. So what I'm going to do is just grab the name of that and simply plug it into here. So that's what our endpoint's going to be called. So this predictor is simply just going to be an instance of a TensorFlow predictor, which uses an endpoint. And what we're going to do is we're going to feed through 4 inputs. And I did this locally before putting into AWS just to see what results I got locally and to confirm that I got those once the model was deployed in AWS. So when I fed these 4 inputs into my model locally, these were the 3 predictions I got. So if we run this, hopefully that's what we get. So again, these 4 inputs are going up to AWS SageMaker through the endpoint, and then that's giving us a result back using the model that we deployed to AWS. And there we go, we've got the exact same numbers. So 0.99, 0.006, oops, and a very small number ending in 1.57. So yeah, that's it, everything's done. So even though there's that weird quirk that it sort of keeps looping, just keep an eye on that and just delete all the extra bits that you don't need. At the end of the day, you just need an endpoint and which points to a model. Now, I will stress here that you do need to clean up your work because all those models and endpoints which are sort of being hosted on compute power, they will continually cost you money unless you sort of turn them off or delete them. So I'll do that in a separate video, but basically I've just listed here the 5 things. That was a question, but it's all good now. So yeah, these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, these 5 things, you just need to go through and just go backtrack and just delete everything as you go. Yeah, like I said, I'll put a link to the following video, which sort of shows you how I do that myself. That's everything. So thanks a lot for watching. If you've got any questions, feel free, just chuck them in the comments below. And yeah, I'll see you guys next time. Thanks.